Everybody, JCB here at the Awesomest. You're watching the Awesomest Travel Vlog. Longtime Awesomites will remember that a little over a year ago, I got married. What you might not know is that we had a Six Flags themed wedding, complete with custom-made capes for guests, tables named after our favorite rides, our minister wore a superhero-themed vest and tie, and even pretended to read from a comic book. Oh, and we had a roller coaster wedding cake. For our honeymoon, we went to the Bahamas and spent a week soaking up sun, swallowing gallons of salt water, and getting yelled at by Frenchmen. By the way, if you haven't watched my 5-part Bahamas travel vlog series, you can click right here to check that out. The Bahamas were fantastic, and we definitely plan to go back someday, but when it comes to anniversaries, we have a plan to visit a new Six Flags theme park every year until we run out of parks. Since our season passes grant us free entrance to every Six Flags park in the continental United States, this sounded like the perfect tradition. And with this being year one, we packed our bags and headed out to Vallejo, California for Six Flags Discovery Kingdom. Since I knew I'd be out of town for a while, I brought and used 4 different cameras for this video. So if the footage seems a little inconsistent, that's why. The first is my normal YouTube camera, the second is my GoPro Hero 4, the third is my smartphone, which happens to be a Galaxy S6 Edge, and the fourth is the little JVC 1080p pocket camera I picked up a few years ago. You may remember it from my interim technology video. I want to say that you'll be seeing quite a few comparisons to Six Flags Magic Mountain in this video, if for no other reason than the fact that I've only been to Six Flags Magic Mountain and Six Flags Over Texas up until this point. I think that's all the housekeeping I have to do, so without any further ado, let's dive right into the trip. We left town at about 4 p.m. and began our 7-hour drive up to Vallejo, California. At about the 5-hour mark, we decided to stop for dinner and found a little restaurant called the Black Bear Diner. I had never heard of this place before, as we don't have them in Southern California, but apparently there are over 85 locations across 8 states. They're as common as Applebee's in Northern California. The food was really good, and the commitment to the bear theme was impressive. So then we finished our trip to Vallejo, California and checked into the hotel, where there was a small misunderstanding that resulted in the 3 of us having to share a queen bed. Needless to say, none of us slept very well that first night. The next day, we bought an inflatable camping mattress and fixed that issue, but that first night was pretty tough. The morning of day 2, we woke up a little later than we wanted to and headed right to the park. So this is day 2, we are at Six Flags Discovery Kingdom. It's actually pretty dead. We got here about a half hour after it opened, I want to say. Been here maybe 10 minutes. And we're just basically checking out the park and seeing what we want to go on first. Thankfully, it was a Tuesday, and the place wasn't terribly busy first thing in the morning. I had heard from locals that the park generally stays pretty dead and doesn't get busy until around noon as people get out of bed and head to the park. But the biggest difference is that Discovery Kingdom looks really, really nice. Whereas Magic Mountain often looks run down with cracked concrete, peeling paint, and gum stuck to every surface within reach of a ride queue, Discovery Kingdom is surprisingly clean. And even though the temperature is a good 10 to 20 degrees cooler in Vallejo than it is in Valencia, Discovery Kingdom cares enough about their guests to offer a lot of shade. There's plenty of tree coverage along every walking path, there are structures built for the sole purpose of providing shade to people waiting in line, and the park is well maintained while the people are really nice. So this is our first Six Flags trip as a married couple on our first anniversary. We have a tradition planned where we're going to visit a new Six Flags park every year on our anniversary with our season pass. This is the first one. It's also the last Six Flags park that we have to visit on the West Coast. So from here on out, they're all further inland. One thing you need to know about Discovery Kingdom is that it's part theme park and part zoo. It's kind of like SeaWorld, but with a focus on all exotic animals and not just marine life. Personally, the 3 of us aren't big fans of the whole exotic animals in captivity thing, but the animals at Discovery Kingdom seem pretty happy for the most part. Their pens were all pretty clean, and most were kept far enough away from the crowds to stay safe, but still close enough so that everyone can see these animals up close. And that's the value of a park like this. Most people might otherwise never see these beautiful animals in person, and there is something about seeing them in person, and not just on TV or in photos, that makes you really feel deep down how special they are and how important it is to protect them. That said, we took the time to experience the animals on display in their little pens, but drew the line at watching the animals perform in shows. I'm fine seeing the animals relaxing in a pool, but I don't want to see them made to do tricks for food. Anyway, on to the rides. So this trip consisted of my wife, our daughter, and myself, and the first day we didn't get on too many rides as we were kind of just wandering around and getting a feel for the park. The first ride we went on was Superman Ultimate Flight. This ride is pretty freaking cool. It takes up a very small portion of the park, but takes advantage of the vertical space like no other ride I've ever seen before. Say hi.
No. We're about to get on Superman.
You start by blasting forward, before rolling back into the loading station and up an incline similar to the tunnel portion of Full Throttle. And then you're shot back through the loading station and the real ride begins. You will experience all sorts of twists and turns, banks and dives, as well as some serious airtime, all before one final rollback into the loading station near the park. Superman's Ultimate Flight is a must-ride if you ever go to Discovery Kingdom.
So I just got off of Superman Ultimate Flight, and I have to say that was pretty fun. I really wish I had one of those types of rides at Six Flags Magic Mountain.
Next, we tried to go on the brand new Joker ride, but it didn't open until about 11:30 that morning. And then after waiting for more than an hour in line, it broke down. So when we heard an employee tell another employee that it'll be more than an hour before it's back up and running, we decided to get out of line. Since we had skipped breakfast that morning, we decided to get some lunch and headed to the back corner of the park to a little Mexican food place called Macho Nacho. It was surprisingly good, another departure from the Six Flags we're accustomed to. Macho Nacho was very much like an in-park Chipotle. I had a burrito and it actually tasted pretty damn good, which is nice considering it was $12, and probably the most expensive burrito I'd ever eaten. Next, we decided to check out the shark exhibit. It was pretty neat. It starts with your typical glass tunnel as the sharks float effortlessly overhead, while the next room features giant glass walls that give you a fantastic view of this underwater habitat and the beautiful animals inside. You might remember my last shark encounter didn't go as planned, so this was a much less salty tasting, much drier way to see sharks up close. At the end of the shark experience, there is an entire shop dedicated to shark merchandise, and it's pretty awesome. We probably spent a good half hour just looking at all the different shark stuff. Now, Discovery Kingdom is a little lacking in the thrill ride department, which we actually expected. Before we left, we made a list of all the rides we wanted to go on, as well as a list of rides we were going to pass on. So here are those rides, and the reasons why we decided not to ride them. First up is Voodoo, which is a typical top spin ride you'd see at a carnival, or if you're a Southern California resident, you could go on this exact same ride at Knott's Berry Farm. Then there was V2 Vertical Velocity, which looked like a lot of fun and was on our list of things to ride, but was closed both days at the park. Tasmanian Devil is one of those frisbee swinging pendulum pucinators. I pass on anything that is based on non-stop spinning. Skyscreamer is exactly the same big swing ride they have at Six Flags Over Texas, while Sky Coaster is just one of those bungee swing rides they have at Magic Mountain and a million other theme parks, and it costs extra. Hammerhead Shark will be immediately recognized by anyone who has ridden the carnival ride Kamikaze, and Daredevil is your typical super loop, which is also a staple of carnivals and county fairs. Then there's Cobra, which reminded me of a slightly larger version of the Dragon Wagon roller coaster most of us rode as a kid. That isn't to say that the park is boring or bad, just that it's a little lacking in the thrill ride roller coaster department. But since we came prepared to the list, we decided to make our way to the front of the park and ride Kong. Surprisingly, this ride was a complete walk-on. We waited only for the train to return to the loading station. Also, the ride attendants didn't seem to care that the guy next to me had his phone out as the ride started, with their exact words to him being, "Hey, try to put your phone away before the drop. We wouldn't want you to lose it." Meanwhile, at Magic Mountain, I can't bring a GoPro on, even if it's strapped to my wrist. As it turns out, Kong is incredibly similar to Silver Bullet at Knott's Berry Farm. It's a fun ride, though. Speaking of rides that are also available at Knott's Berry Farm, Boomerang Coast to Coaster is exactly the same as Boomerang at Knott's. Basically, it starts by lifting you backward and then drops you down so that you free fall through the entire length of the ride and end up at the top of another lift hill. It then drops you again, this time backward, and you traverse the whole ride in reverse. And then we rode Medusa. I was excited for this ride because I had heard random people and park employees talking about Medusa all day. Everyone wanted to know if we had ridden it yet, though I guess in a way I kind of had, since it's a classic B&M style coaster, very similar to Scream and Riddler's Revenge at Six Flags Magic Mountain. In fact, if you read the Wikipedia pages for both Scream and Medusa, you'll see a lot of reoccurring elements, including the 150-foot drop and the 128-foot vertical loop. It was fun and again a complete walk-on, but if I had waited an hour to ride this ride, I probably would have been disappointed. The last ride we got on that day was a so-called 5D virtual experience roller coaster, Pacific Rim. This ride is basically a movie. It's Discovery Kingdom's answer to California Adventure soaring around the world, except instead of hanging suspended in the air, you sit strapped into a bulky movie theater seat that lifts slightly off the ground and proceeds to rumble, shift, pitch, and yaw in sync to the action on the screen. Riders wear 3D glasses, and the film plays out complete with smoke and water effects spraying towards the audience. Imagine D-Box on steroids. It was okay, I'm not a big fan of Pacific Rim, so watching roughly 10 minutes of it, even in a chair that has a mind of its own, didn't do much for me. So it was about 4 in the afternoon when the complete lack of sleep the night before finally caught up to us, and we decided to go back to the hotel. Knowing that we had a whole nother day scheduled to enjoy the park made this decision a no-brainer. Besides, we knew we had a blow-up mattress to buy. Later that evening, we decided to get dinner and sample some local food. We consulted Yelp and decided to check out Keepin' It Island, a Pacific Island-themed takeout restaurant that was absolutely delicious. If you have the chance to stop in there, be sure to give it a taste. So that's the end of part 1 of this travel vlog. If you enjoyed it, make sure you subscribe so you'll be kept in the loop when part 2 comes out, where I explore Discovery Kingdom even more and try out a few more rides. Of course, in between these updates, I'm going to try to release other content so that the channel stays varied, but if you enjoyed this, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. I release new videos every week, and until next time, keep being awesome.